Hello YouTube, this is Jay Coder back with another stream, and today we're going to be having a Kotlin tutorial where we're going to be going over lists and mutable lists and things like that. Lists are an important step inside Android development if we want to have any type of list of data, work with any type of recycler view or a composable text, lazy column, things like that. We'll need to know about lists. And so, all right. And also for like live data and things like that. And so, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the lesson. It's going to be going over this code lab here where it's useless in Kotlin. And for people to be able to follow along, I'm going to go ahead and post this link inside the chat like usual so that anyone coming in can follow along. Then I'll also post it inside the comments as well. So, alright. And let me go ahead and mute the music here. And today we're not going to be using Android Studio. We're going to be using Kotlin Playground. So this stream will be purely going over the Kotlin code, and I hope you guys are having a good day so far. And if this is your first time coming to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to learn more about Android development and become an Android and go on the road to become an Android development pro, you can follow my channel to see content like this. Before you begin, it's common to make lists of all sorts of situations in your everyday life, such as a list of things to do, a list of guests for an event, a wish list, or a grocery list. In programming, lists are also very useful. For example, there could be a list of news articles, songs, calendar, events, or social media posts within the app. Learning how to create and use lists is an important programming concept to add to your toolbox, and it will enable you to create more sophisticated apps. In this code lab, you will use the Kotlin Playground to become familiar with lists in Kotlin and create a program for ordering different variations of noodle soup. Are you hungry yet? Familiar with using the Kotlin? So the prerequisites are you're familiar with using the Kotlin Playground, which I'm going to go ahead and put the Kotlin Playground in the chat. So for anyone who may be joining in, you'll be able to go ahead and follow along by using the code lab. By using the Kotlin Playground for this code lab. And you need to be familiar with basic Kotlin programming concepts of the from Unit 1 of the Android Basics and Kotlin course. The main functions, arguments, and return values, variables, data types, and operations, as well as control flow statements. Also able to define a Kotlin class, create an object instance from it, and access its properties and methods. Able to create subclasses and understand how the program will be able to create an order, add noodles and vegetables to it, and then calculate the total cost of the order. What you need: a computer with an internet connection to access the Kotlin Playground. 2. Introduction to lists. In earlier collabs, you learned about in earlier collabs, you learned about basic data types in Kotlin, such as int, double, boolean, and string. They allow you to store a certain type of value within a variable, but what if you want to store more than one value? That is where having a list data type is useful. A list is a collection of items with a specific order. There are two types of lists in Kotlin: read-only lists. Lists cannot be modified after you create it. Mutable lists. Mutable lists can be modified after you create it, meaning you can add, remove, or update its elements. When using list or mutable list, you must specify the type of element that it can contain. For example, list of int holds a list of integers, and list of string holds a list of strings. If you define a car class in your program, you can have a list of car that holds a list of car object instances. The best way to understand lists is to try them out. Create a list, open the Kotlin Playground, which I have open here, and delete the existing code provided. So they want us to delete the existing code provided. And inside main, create a variable called numbers of type list of int, because this will contain a read-only list of integers. Create a new list using the Kotlin standard library function list of, and pass in the elements of the list as arguments separated by commas. List of this returns a read-only list of integers from 1 to 6. So inside our main function, so I actually deleted my main function. They really just want you to delete this print statement. And so we're going to replace it with this. And this is not a mutable list. This is a list of these items. So it said with the list, it's a read-only list. So if it's not mutable, it's read-only. So that means you cannot modify the list. If the type of variable can be guessed or inferred based on the value on the right-hand side of the assignment operator, then you can omit the data type of the variable. Hence, you can shorten this line of code to the following. So, since by example, Kotlin can tell that these are integers, you don't need to specify the type. So we can shorten the code to only include the val numbers equals list of, and then our list of integers. Use println to print the numbers list. So we're going to use the println statement to print the numbers in the list. And remember that putting the $sign in the string means that what follows is an expression that will be evaluated and added to this string. See string templates. This line of code could also be written println list plus numbers. They're talking about the numbers, the $sign here, and you use the $sign to display a variable inside the curly braces. Retrieve the size of a list using the numbers.size property and print that out too. So they want us to go ahead and print our list from the print ln statement, which we have there. And they also want us to retrieve the size of the list, which to receive the size, you can say numbers.size. And then we're going to print out the size right there. And then we're going to run the program. The output is a list of all elements of the list and size of the list. Notice that the brackets indicated that this is a list. Inside the brackets are the elements of the numbers separated by columns. Also observe the elements are in the same order as you created. So send this. So we have the list and the size here. All right, and then the functionality is access list elements. The functionality specific to lists is that you can access each element of a list by its index, which is an integer number that represents the position. This is a program of the numbers. This is a diagram of the numbers list we created, showing each element and its corresponding index. The index is usually an offset from the first element. For example, when you say list sub 2, you are not asking for the second element of the list, but the element that is in the second position offset from the first element. Once list sub 0 is the first element, 0 offset, list sub 1 is the second element, offset of 1. List sub 2 is the third element, offset of 2, and so on. Add the following code after the existing code in the main function. Run the code after each step so you can verify the output is what you expect. Print the first element of the list at index 0. You could call the get function with the desired index as numbers.get of 0, or you can use shorthand syntax with square brackets around the index as numbers sub 0. So we're going to print the very first element of our list, which is going to be in the 0th position. Next, print the second element of the list at index of 1. So this, we're going to print the list, the second element, which is in position 1. So inside list, this is position 0, this is position 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Valid index values, indices of the list, go from 0 to the last index, which is the size of the list minus 1. That means for your numbers, list the indices run from 0 to 5. Print the last element of the list using numbers size minus 1 to calculate the index, which should be 5. Accessing the element at the 5th index should return 6 as the output. So All right. So they also want us to print the last element, and let's see, print the last element of the list using numbers minus 1 to calculate its index, which should be 5. Actually, let's see, the element at the fifth index should return 6. So, so this is the last index and the last element. Let me go ahead and play this really quick. So, so this was the last element, and this one's the last index. Okay. So, so the last index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the last index, and the actual last element is the value inside the last index. Kotlin also supports first and last operations on the list. Try calling numbers.first and numbers.last and see the output. You'll notice that numbers.first returns the first list and the numbers.last returns the last element of the list. Alright, so we have the numbers.first and the numbers.last. And the numbers.first prints the first element of the list, and the numbers.last prints the last element of the list. You'll notice that numbers.first returns the first element. Yeah. Okay. And another useful list operation is the contains method to find out if a given element is in the list. For example, if you have a list of employee names in a company, you can use the contains method to find if a given name is present in the list. On your numbers list, call the contains method with one of the integers that is present in the list. Numbers.contains, so 4 would return the true. Then call the contains method with an integer that isn't in your list. Numbers.contains 7 would return false. So, alright, so we have these two. We're checking if numbers.contains 4 and numbers.contains 7. Okay. And then does it contain 4? True. Yes, 4 is in there. Does it contain 7? False. There's no 7 in here. Your completed code should look like this. The comments are optional. Run your code, and this is the output. Lists are read-only. Delete the code within the Kotlin Playground and replace the following code. The colors list is initialized to a list of 3 colors representing as strings. So we're gonna go ahead and delete this. Actually, I don't think I want to completely delete this. I want to go ahead and comment it. Well, actually, I can't comment it. Well, actually, yeah. I mean, sure. And then they want us to make this new list of colors, green, orange, and blue. Remember that you cannot add or change elements and read-only list. See what happens if you try to add an item to the list or try to modify an element of the list by setting it equal to a new value. So we cannot add or change what's already in there. And when we try to add or change what's already in there, we get an error. We cannot add purple or we cannot add yellow because regular list does not have an add. An add comes into play when you use mutable list. Run your code and you get several error messages. In essence, the errors say that the add method does not exist for a list and that you're not allowed to change the value of an element. Remove the incorrect code. You've seen firsthand that it's not possible to change a read-only list. However, there are numbers of operations on lists that don't change the list but will return a new list. 2 of those are reversed, sorted. The reversed function returns a new list where the elements are the reverse order, and sorted returns a new list where the elements are sorted in ascending order. Add the code to the reserved colors list. Print the output. This is a new list that contains the elements of colors in reverse order. Add a second line of code to print the original list. So you can see the original list has not changed. Reverse list colors dot reverse list color. So add to reverse the colors. Alright, so when we run so there are operations that don't change the original list but returns a new list. Such as this one. So colors dot reversed. So colors dot reverse will be blue, orange, or I'm sorry, blue, orange, green will be green, orange, blue. And this is temporary because we have not stored that in the variable, but it displays the return value of the reverse list. This is the output of the two lists printed. Add code to return a sorted version of the list using the sorted function. So this is a sorted version of the list using a sorted function. The output is a new list of colors sorted in alphabetical order. Cool. Okay. So colors not sorted. And that is a new list of colors by alphabetical order. So B, G, and O. Alright. So it's great that we have a built-in function to automatically sort things for us. The output is a new list of colors sorted in alphabetical order. Cool. You can also try the sorted function on the list of unsorted numbers. So we have unsorted numbers and we want to sort it. So out of these numbers here, the sorted numbers is here. So it successfully sorted 1, 3, and 5 using the syntax odd numbers dot sorted, odd numbers dot sorted. Note, don't worry about having to remember all of the possible list operations. When you are developing apps in Android Studio, as you work with lists and other data types, Android Studio will show you functions and properties available for them. As for example, in the following screenshot, by now you can see the usefulness of being able to create lists. However, be it would be nice to be able to modify the list after creation. So let's take a mutable list. Let's look at a mutable list next. Introduction to mutable lists. Mutable lists are lists that can be modified after creation. You can add, remove, or change items. You can do everything you can do with a read-only list as well. Mutable lists are types of mutable is are of type mutable lists, and you can create them by calling mutable list of. Create a mutable list. Delete the existing code in main. Within the main function, create an empty mutable list and assign it to val variable called entrees. So we're going to make a mutable list of entrees. And it's going to be an empty mutable list because we haven't added any values to it yet. The result In the following, this results in the following error. If you try to run the code, not enough information to infer variable type t. Because Kotlin uses by example of what you add to the list to determine the type. So since it's an empty list, it does not know what type is going to be. As mentioned earlier, when you create a mutable list or list, Kotlin tries to infer what type of elements the list contains from the arguments passed. For example, if you write list of noodles, Kotlin infers that you want to create a list of strings. When you initialize an empty list without elements, Kotlin cannot infer the type of elements, so you have to explicitly state the type. Do this by adding the type in angle brackets right after mutable list of or list of. In documentation, you may see the T where T stands for type. Correct the variable declaration to specify that you want to create a mutable list of type string. So now we would like to make a mutable list of type string. So we're going to set the variable equal to that. And well, entries, mutable list. So the syntax is this: mutable list of string and then this. So we need to do mutable list of string. Okay, we have that there. Another way you could have fixed the error is by specifying the data type of the variable up front. So, or we can write it like this. No, you can use val for a mutable list because the entries variable contains a reference to the list, and that reference doesn't change even if the contents of the list do. Interesting. Print the list. So we're going to go ahead and print the list, which is an empty list. So these two things are actually doing the same thing. So I don't need both those. So when we print it, it prints an empty box because we have not added any entries yet. Add elements to a list. Mutable lists become interesting when you add, remove, and update elements. Add noodles to the list with entries dot add noodles. The add function returns true if adding the element to the list succeeded, false otherwise. Print the list to confirm that noodles has actually been added. So we're going to add the noodles and then print it. So when you want to add something to the list, you need to do the list name dot add and then in parentheses add your thing. So entrees dot add pizza. So we actually go ahead and add it while we're printing um the to add noodles. We print this while we're adding, but like here in one line, or more simply, this is how you add something to the list. Entrees.add, entrees.add, entrees.add. But anyway, so this actually returns true, and then noodles. Okay. It says add another item of spaghetti to the list. So we're going to add another item called spaghetti to the list. Noodles, spaghetti. Add spaghetti, true. The resulting entrees list now contains two items. Add spaghetti, true. Entrees, noodles, spaghetti. Instead of doing elements by one using add, you can add multiple elements at a time using add all and pass in a list. Create a list of more items. You won't have to change it, so make it a val and immutable. Okay, so we're gonna make a list of more items with ravioli, lasagna, fettuccine. Using add all the items from the list to entrees, print the resulting list. So not only can you add an item, a single item, to a list, you can add a complete list at one time to an existing list by using the add all. So basically, by saying more, actually, our original list is entrees dot add all more items. So add all more items. So it's notice here it's not add more items, it's add all more items. Not add more items, but add all items. Not add, but add all more items. And then let's see. So let's go ahead and print this entrees. So entrees entrees with added items. That's supposed to be in the quotations. And so, entrees with the added items, boom, ravioli, lasagna, and fettuccine. So we do have the added items here. And so it wanted, you know, when you add a list, you say add all, not just add. Okay. All right. So now the output shows the adding the list was successful. So they wanted to add it this way. So let me go ahead and do that. The output shows that the adding list was successful. Now try adding a number to this list. So we want to try adding a number to this list. This fails with an error. So when we try to add a number to a mutable list of strings, let's see what happens. The integer literal does not conform to expected type string, so you can't mix and match types inside the same list. This fails with an error. This is because the entrees list expects elements of type string, and you are trying to add an int. Remember to only add elements of the correct data type to a list. Otherwise, you will get a compile error. This is one way that Kotlin ensures your code is safer with type safety. Remove the incorrect line of code so your code compiles. Remove elements from a list. So we're going to remove that so our code compiles. And we can use the remove function to remove spaghetti from the list. So we're going to remove spaghetti from the list. Remember that's dot remove to remove something from the list. So remember it's dot remove to remove something from the list. Dot remove to remove something from the list. Dot remove to remove something from the list. And let's see if that has been dot removed from the list. And voila, spaghetti is gone. Removing spaghetti returns true because the element was present in the list and could be successfully removed. This list now only has 4 elements. What happens if you try to remove an item that doesn't exist in the list? Try removing rice from the list with entrees.remove rice. So we try to remove rice. And what happens when we try to remove ice? Rice, it says false. It returns false because there is no such item known as rice inside the list. The remove method returns false because the element does not exist and therefore should not be removed. The list remains unchanged with only 4 items still. You can also specify the index of the element to remove. Use remove at to remove the element at the index 0. So we want to remove the element at the index 0. So we're going to go ahead and add this guy. Actually, let me see. Go ahead and copy that. Okay. Oops. Alright, so we're here. Okay, and then what it wants us to do here is so here it says remove first element, and then it's says entrees.remove at. So we use the remove at method. So it's dot remove at, and this is a capital at, not a lowercase at, but a capital at. And this is not a uppercase T, it's a lowercase t. So this remove at is going to be camel case. So it's going to be remove at. So dot remove at. Dot remove at. And the reason why I'm repeating this is so that we can memorize this together, so we can be able to better off the top of our brain be able to come up with these different methods, because certain situations in your developer life you may be required to be able to do that. The return value of the remove at 0 is the first element, noodles, which got removed from the list. Now has 3 elements. So, alright, let's see if that is true. So we hit play. Noodles used to be inside. Now the first element is removed. Then boom, ravioli, lasagna, and fettuccine are left. Remove first element, noodles. Okay. If you want to clear the whole entire list, you can do clear. You can call the clear method. Alright, so we have the entrees clear, and then so when we go ahead and do clear, and remember, when you want to clear, it's dot clear, it's dot clear, and it's dot clear. And this will clear all the entrees. And then boom, our element is empty because we called the entrees dot clear. The output shows an empty list. Kotlin gives you a way to check if a list is empty using is empty function. Try printing out entrees is empty. So, em- so when we print this, let's see what happens. So empty entrees dot is empty. So we're basically asking if it's empty. Is it empty? Yes, it is empty. True. So the is empty method is useful if you want to do an operation on a list or access a certain element, but you want to make sure that the list is not empty first. Here's all the code you wrote for mutable list. The comments are optional. All right. And now we are on looping through a list. To perform an operation on each item in the list, you can loop through the list, also known as iterating through the list. Loops can loops can sorry about that. Loops loops through the list. To perform an operation on each item in the list, you can loop through the list, also known as iterating through the list. Loops can be used with lists and mutable lists. While loops. One type of loop is a while loop. A while loop starts with the while keyword in Kotlin and contains a block of code within curly braces that gets executed over and over again as long as the expression in the parentheses is true. To prevent the code from executing forever, called an infinite loop. The code block must contain logic that changes the value of the expression so that eventually the expression will be false and you stop executing the loop at the point you exit the while loop and continue with executing the loop that comes after the loop. While expression. While the expression is true, execute this code block. A while loop doesn't need to involve a list. Example here, but it is useful for list. A while loop doesn't need to involve a list, but it's it's useful for list. Use a while loop. Let me check out this example here really quick. Okay, I'll post this in the chat so that people can be able to reference further the loops in the documentation. So let me go ahead and post this in the chat here. And above link is for more on loops. Alright. Kotlin supports all the commonly used loops for while, do while. For in Kotlin works. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That's the documentation for the loops. And use a while loop to iterate through a list. Create a variable to keep track of what the index of what you are currently looking at in the list. The index variable will keep incrementing by one each time until you reach the last index of the list, after which you exit the loop. Delete the existing code in the Kotlin Playground and have an empty main function. So, after this playing around with the mutable list, we are going to delete our mutable list code here to make room for our next mission. And all right, let's say you are organizing a party. Create a list where each element represents the number of guests that RSVP'd from each family. First, first family said 2 people would come from their family. Second family said 4 of them would come, and so on. So we're going to list this. So guests per family. And I'm gonna figure out how many total guests there will be. Write a loop to find the answer. Create a var for the total number of guests. Utilize it, initialize it to 0. So the total amount of guests will start out as 0. And then initialize a var for the index variable as described earlier. So the index will start out as at 0 as well. And then write a loop to iterate through the list. The condition is to keep executing the code block as long as the index value is less than the size of the list. So while index is less than guess per family, not size. Okay. And then we're gonna post this guy. Actually, these 2 guys can be indented. And then within the loop, get the element of the list at the current index and add it to the total number of guests variable. Remember that total guests plus equals guests per family is the same as total guests equals total guests plus guests per family index. So they want us to add this guy inside the while loop here. And it says, notice that the last line of the loop increments the index variable by 1 using index plus plus. So the next iteration of the loop will look at the next family in the list. Okay, so they want us to add this. And then they want the index to plus plus. And then after the while loop, you can print out the result. Print line total guess count. Total guess. Total guess count. Total guess. Run the program, and the output is as follows. You can verify this is the correct answer by manually adding up the numbers in the list. Alright, total guest count is 10. And here's the full code snippet. Okay, we got that. And the total guest amount is 10. So 1, 2, plus 4, 5, 6, plus 1, 7, plus 3, 8, 9, 10. So, yep, there's 10 guests coming. And we use the loop to add that up. And note, because doing a simple operation on a variable and storing it back in the variable is common, there is a shorthand for using the plus equals operator. There are equivalent operators for minus equal, multiplication times equal, and division divide equals. See more details here. Operator overloading. I'm gonna go ahead and post the link of that inside the chat so that you all can be able to reference it. And this is actually operator overloading. The operating overloading reference. And with a while loop, you had to write code to create a variable to keep track of the index. To get the element at the index in the list and to update that index variable, there's an even faster and more concise way. And it's use a for loop. A for loop is another type of loop. It makes looping through a list much easier. It starts with the for keyword in Kotlin with the code block in curly braces. The condition of executing the block of code is stated in parentheses. So for each element in the list, execute this code. So in this example, the variable number is set equal to the first element of number list, and the code block is executed. Then the number variable is automatically updated to be the next element of number list, and the code block is executed again. This repeats for each element of the list until the end of the number list is reached. Delete the existing code in the Kotlin Playground and replace with the following code. So, delete the existing code in the Kotlin Playground, and we're going to go ahead and make this new list right here, a list of names. So we're going to delete the code that we have here for our while loop and go ahead and paste that there for our list of names. Add a for loop to print all items in the names list. So we're going to add a for loop, and just with this simple amount of code, we can print out the names in the names list one by one, and it's going to be stored into name while we loop through these. So it does Princess Jessica, loops to the next one, Henry, and so forth and so on. And so it automatically knows to increase the index. This is a much easier way if you than if you had to write this as a while loop. The output is this. A common operation on lists is to do something with each element of the list. Modify the loop to also print out the number of characters in that person's name. Hint, you can use the length property of the string. And, well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that there. And we're going to go ahead and do the part 2 for the next stream. And if you all learned something, please hit the like button and tune in to subscribe to the channel to tune in for the next stream that we're going to be doing, finishing up the list practice that we're doing in Kotlin. And so that's all for today. And I want to tell you all that thank you for coming, and always stay coding. This is Jay Coder. Have a great day. Bye.